whilst he was still able to trade. Last week, I recorded a video trying to promote and platform a Jamaican West Indian bakery. A lot of people seemed more interested in the racism that was mentioned in the video than they did with supporting the actual shop. I quickly looked through the comments and started to realize that people were confused by the difference between direct racism and indirect racism. Black businesses were driven out of Soho Road. They didn't fail, and there's a number of reasons as to why. One is the over-policing of the Black community. Another is an increase in rent and insurance premiums, which meant that a lot of businesses had to bootstrap or self-fund, and Black people were often denied loans. It's important to remember that West Indians couldn't even open bank accounts in the UK, which is why they had to have things like Pardner. Another is that the local council would deny planning permissions to Black businesses. However, they would approve and prioritise planning permissions from food chains. I know that we're more familiar with direct racism, but you don't have to be called the N-word to experience racism. Direct racism is calling someone a racial slur, stereotyping someone. It's even saying that you don't want to serve someone in their restaurant because they're Black or because they're brown, etc. It's very overt. Indirect racism is more about the policies, processes, and structures that are in place in society that create extra barriers for certain people of colour. Prior to the Race Equalities Act, it was quite normal for a shop to say, we're not serving you because you're Black, and it was quite normal for a school to not admit Black students. However, after the Race Relations Act was put in place, you couldn't overtly just do that because you could be taken to court. So what schools and organisations needed to do is create policies that would act as barriers for Black people. So for example, if a school only wanted to admit white children, they would now create a policy that says, we don't admit children who wear their hair in locks. We don't allow afro hair. We don't allow braids or cane row. So they're not directly saying we don't want Black children in our school, but they are making it a lot more difficult for those children to come to their school. And that's the type of racism that this bakery owner was speaking about. She's being treated differently to the other businesses, not just by the other businesses, but also by the authorities and by the police. She's over-policed. She has extra checks, more checks than other businesses on the street. And she also says that access to her building is always restricted, whether it's the other business owners constantly parking in front of her shop. That particular day, there was an incident on the street. She wasn't allowed to trade. She wasn't even allowed to go into a business. However, the guy that owns the business next door, who had the Porsche outside, he was allowed to be in and out and to trade as normal. She lost out on a day's worth of profit, whilst he